I should have brought my glasses, it's so bright over here. Hey guys, so today I want to share with you 5 drought tolerant perennials that everyone should have in their garden. I have every single one of these perennials in our gardens and I'm working on adding more of them. We live in a pretty wet environment, but in recent years we have been having drought in the summer. And just to make it easier on myself, I have been planting some drought tolerant perennials in the gardens that are far away from the house, where maybe it is hard for me to get irrigation or it is difficult for me to water them. Basically, I would have to carry a whole bunch of watering cans and water them. So I like to have these even though we are in a wet environment because they serve a multitude of purposes. So the first one that I like to share with you is lavender. This is my absolutely favorite plant of all times. I love lavender for various reasons. One, it is very beautiful. It has beautiful purple kind of iridescent blooms. They work wonderfully in cottage gardens and in formal gardens alike, and they have a beautiful fragrance. As soon as you brush by them, they immediately have this intoxicating smell and they always look good. I find that even in the winter they have some structure to them. They kind of provide you with that structure if you live in a snowy environment like we are. Right here behind me, you're not seeing all the snow, but in front of me I'm being blinded by it. Our ground is completely covered with snow, but over here it's the woods, so you're not going to see much snow in here. They're also a super hardy plant. They are hardy to zone 5. Originally we were zone 5, now we are zone 6A. Lavender thrives in well-draining soil and it loves the sun. It does not want to be in the shade. It can live in some part shade location. It's not going to grow to its full potential. It will bloom, but it's not going to be as it would be in the sun. And I think that goes for most plants that love the sun. They are going to look way bigger and stronger if you do place them in the sun, and they're going to bloom a lot more. So just keep in mind that this is something that needs the sun. It also works great as a medicinal plant. You can take the flowers and the leaves as well and use them in herbal teas and probably tinctures as well. You can also create essential oil from it. So it has a multitude of uses for it, and it is absolutely gorgeous. Like I said, it's probably my favorite plant. Probably. I think it is. If it's not my favorite plant, it's definitely at the top of the list. In fact, everything in our house, when it comes to household cleaning stuff, has to have the scent of lavender, and it has to be lavender scented. Okay, so the next plant on the list is sedum. And sedum is just a wonderful plant. It holds on to water super well, and the foliage on it always looks good, except in the winter, of course. But they have these beautiful kind of succulent leaves to them, and they come now in all sorts of colors and shapes and sizes. So you have a huge variety of sedums to pick from for your garden. You don't have to stick with just one variety. Before there was the autumn joy sedum. I think that is one of the more popular ones, but now you have all sorts of varieties, and Proven Winner is coming up with all sorts of different varieties of sedums as well. They have one that I really want in my garden. It is the back and black sedum. I think I love plants that are just kind of out of the ordinary and that you're not going to see in everyday life, and the foliage is going to add a pop of color to your garden, so you don't have to only depend on the flowers themselves, but by having different color foliage and textures, you're going to add that color, constant color in the garden. And sedum doesn't need water really at all unless you live in a dry environment. Like for me, I don't have to water our sedum at all. I irrigate around it, but not directly on it. And I believe that even if I just left it as it is, it would survive and it would be great because we get precipitation during the summer and the spring. Basically spring, summer and fall we are getting precipitation. In the winter, of course, we are. But those are that's during the season where it is growing. So it's always getting some sort of water, even if I'm not watering it. If you live in a dry environment, you probably would have to provide it with some sort of water, some supplemental watering, but just don't give it too much. maybe, I don't know, maybe once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks. It depends on your environment and the kind of humidity you have. If you live in a super dry environment, or maybe in an environment where it doesn't rain in the summer but you are super humid, so you just want to kind of take into consideration these things and just make sure that it's going to be receiving some sort of water. And that goes for all drought tolerant perennials. They do need some water. It's not like they don't need any water at all, but some need a little more than others, and sedum is one of those plants that really doesn't need that much water at all. Lavender is one that I found that it does require a little bit of watering, and I found that also it can benefit a little bit from some fertilizing. You don't want to overdo it. Just give it specific things for the roots and for flowering, and it's going to put on it's going to look so much healthier if you do that, because I found that if I don't give it anything, if you have a soil that is just not great, like we have over here, our soil is pretty terrible. You do have to give it a little bit of something for it to do its absolute best, but don't overdo it is a trick. So one of the things that I give lavender to help it grow is some phosphorus, and I also give it calcium for cell structure, and you can give it potassium as well. You don't want to give it too much nitrogen. If you give it too much nitrogen, that can make it flop. It can make it possibly put on too much leafy growth and not any flowers, and also it possibly might kill it. I don't know, I haven't experienced that myself, but it is possible. But just be mindful that it's not going to love tons of fertilizer, and that goes without saying for all the rest of the drought tolerant perennials. They all don't like that much fertilizer, with exception to one of them, and I'll get to that one. Okay, so the third one on the list is Russian sage. Like lavender, this plant also has a very similar appearance to lavender. It has a little bit more bluish tint, and it looks beautiful for most of the season. The scent on it, I personally didn't smell it. I didn't walk up to it and smell it because I have those pretty far away from our house. They are at the entrance of our driveway, and they look beautiful for most of the season, and when they are in bloom, they are gorgeous. They have beautiful purple blooms. I have the what's it called? I'll put the name of the variety that I have over here, and it's a proven winner variety that I have. It's not the old time variety, although those are still beautiful as well, but those grow really tall and they kind of flop over, and you normally see them in commercial landscapes, probably older commercial landscapes. They're still beautiful, but it's not what I was going for in that area. And they are pretty hardy. I believe they are hardy to zone 4. Don't quote me on that. I will try to put the hardiness zone for all these plants that I'm talking about on the screen, so that I won't mess up, because I can't remember all the hardiness zones for all the plants. Okay, so just like lavender and sedum, this plant doesn't need a super healthy soil. You can pretty much throw it in any type of soil, but similar to lavender, it does benefit from a little bit of fertilization, targeted fertilization again, not so much to the foliage, but more to the roots and blooms and cell structure. So just keep that in mind. I don't know if it has any medicinal value to it. I haven't done my research on that, but if you're interested in this, you can look it up. I personally am a big avid medicinal gardener. I just started my medicinal garden last year, but I've always had plants that have some sort of medicinal use to them. But just recently I started a specific medicinal garden so that I know that all these plants that are in here are medicinal. And just to make it easier on myself, if I want something to make a salve or tea or whatever, I can go to that garden and harvest those plants and use them medicinally. But anyways, that's not what we're talking about right here. So let's stay on target, shall we? And let's move on to the next plant, and that is yarrow. So yarrow is a medicinal plant, and now it comes in all sorts of colors and also textures. Yarrow has a beautiful leaf texture to it. It has this kind of like a fern appearance to it, but last year I planted a yarrow that had a completely different appearance to its leaves. It still had sort of toothed edged leaves to it, but it kind of its leaves look more like the Russian sage leaves than yarrow, and I was surprised by that. I think that was the Siberian, it's a Siberian yarrow. I forgot its exact name. The common name is Love Parade yarrow, and I bought the seeds from Baker Creek, and I started it from seed. So anyways, yarrow is drought tolerant. It's also like I was saying, it comes in all sorts of colors. You have peach, you have pinks and whites and purples and all sorts of colors. It's no longer just the white yarrow that maybe your grandmother had in her garden. Now it comes in all sorts of colors, but I believe that if you want to use it for medicinal uses, you probably are better off planting the original yarrow. Its scientific name is Achillea, and I believe that is a name also for most of them. And that's probably going to give you the most benefits. Yarrow can live also in most environments. I've seen it grow in gravel, in sand, in all sorts of things. That plant will plant itself anywhere. Now keep in mind, if you do have the original variety of yarrow, the old times yarrow, that's going to seed itself everywhere, but the new varieties are not like that at all. They are designing them so that they don't seed themselves that way. Maybe if they do seed themselves, they're not going to be as drastic as the original type of yarrow. And the last plant on the list is coneflower or echinacea. And if you are looking for the medicinal type of echinacea, that's going to be your Echinacea purpurea. There are other types of echinacea, I believe, that are also medicinal. But anyways, I always touch on this because I know this video is not about medicinal plants, it's about drought tolerant plants, but these are drought tolerant plants, and a lot of them are also medicinal plants. I think that's because drought tolerant plants are excellent at taking up nutrients from the soil, and I think that's the reason why they are medicinal, at least most of them. But anyways, so echinacea is just a beautiful, beautiful flower. You can plant it in your flower beds, in your raised beds, and whatever you want, and it's a sort of a cottage kind of garden. You can plant it in a formal garden, I suppose, if you like maybe plant a mass of it. And also it is great for pollinators. Now all these plants are going to be wonderful for pollinators. They're going to draw in your butterflies and hummingbirds and bees and all sorts of things. The bees love the sedum especially, and the yarrow, the echinacea, draws a lot of butterflies and hummingbirds, and the same with the lavender and the what's it called, the sedum. They also are going to draw some other types of pollinators, like certain types of wasps and flies and these things, but they are pollinators nonetheless. But anyways, echinacea is, I believe, also hardy to zone 4, and it is super drought tolerant. It does benefit from a little bit of watering if you are going through a drought period maybe, or if you live in a super dry environment. It's going to prevent it from getting some powdery mildew and maybe wilting, these kind of things, and some insect damage. So by giving it some supplemental watering, you are going to prevent it from stressing a little bit. It is drought tolerant, definitely, but it does benefit from a little bit of supplemental watering. For echinacea, same as yarrow, they now come in varieties of colors. You can find reds, yellows, oranges, even greens, and all sorts of colors, whites. They are absolutely gorgeous, and I have them in several areas in our gardens, and I'm planning on adding more. I actually planted some seeds, and I'm going to be adding some Echinacea purpurea in our medicinal garden, and I'll be adding some more in some other areas of the garden, different kinds of echinaceas. If you want to check out more plants to add to your garden, check this video over here.